course current regulatory requirement for conducting clinical trial in India version 2. This is our lecture number 19, and here we are going to address the common things, that is the common observations during submission of clinical trial or the BEV protocol, that is a bioequivalence and bioavailability protocol. The learning objective from this lecture, the learners will come to know after the lecture whether the protocol approval is mandatory or not, what are the basic concerns while submitting the protocol, then types of the clinical trial applications, the deficiencies, what is our main objective of this lecture. So you will see the major deficiencies and the timeline to reply and what could be happen if it is not addressed properly. So let us start with the introduction of this lecture. The major concern in any clinical trial are the protection of study participants' safety and right, and ensuring the accuracy and validity of the data being collected. To ensure that these concerns are adequately addressed in the study, reviewers at CDSU emphasize the critical elements of pharmaceutical, preclinical, toxicological, clinical, regulatory aspects and some other aspects. CDSU, while dealing with the application, focuses on evaluation of clinical trial application with respect to chemical and pharmaceutical information of active pharmaceutical ingredient as well as the formulation, then the regulatory status in country and outside the country, then data with respect to the preclinical study and the clinical trial studies. We have seen in our earlier lecture that all clinical trial applicants has to be registered at Sugam portal. We are having an online submission, and I am going to give a detailed lecture on how to submit the online application in our subsequent lectures. So before making the application at CDSU HQ headquarters, the applicant has to register on the Sugam portal. Detail about this Sugam portal is given in the guideline by CDAC, and it is available at our website cdsu.gov.in. We can divide the CT applications type in the category like new drug application, then the investigational new drug application, global clinical trial or subsequent new application and other. So these types of categories are given there. All the clinical trial applications in form 4 along with the fees and dossier as the requirement has been given in the table 1 as per the new drug and clinical trial rule. It has to be uploaded onto the Sugam portal. We know that as per appendix 5 of good clinical practices, the document essential to upload that before clinical trial of commencements are investigator's brochure, then signed protocol, CRF, ICF format, ethics committee approval, then the regulatory approval, whether it has been banned, withdrawn or approved in country or any of the country. Along with this, the CVs of investigator and other related documents. In addition to the source document, SAE reporting, monitoring report by the monitor, then interim report and the IP accountability at the side, these documents also required to submit. CDSU has a clinical trial and global clinical trial division, and also it is having subsequent new drug division, IND division, FDC division, and they examine the application along with the dossiers and fee for administrative requirement, and if found the documents submitted they are not adequate, they raise the query, and this is also online. So they raise the query through Sugam portal and it will reaches to the applicant's mail ID. Similarly, in all the division like global clinical trial, IND, these all divisions are online nowadays. Regarding IND applications, all applications along with dossier and fees evaluated by IND committee at ICMR both scientifically, technically and also at the CDSCO headquarter, and if found it is not compliant with, then the CDSCO in consultation with the IND committee it gives the query letter. The applicant has to reply to this query letter, and after receiving the satisfactory reply for administrative query, CDSCO then refer this application to the subject expert committee, and the subject expert committee after detailed deliberation in presence of the applicant and his representative, if found satisfactory, then they recommend to give the clinical trial permission, and accordingly the licensing authority issues the permission. So this is the overview of how to submit the application and how the query is raised by the central licensing authority and the procedure to be followed. Now let us see what is means by actually clinical trial protocol. So the definition of the clinical trial protocol, it was not there in previous rules and regulation. Now it has been given in the chapter 1st of New Drug and Clinical Trial Rule, that is rule 2 and subclause K. So according to these rules, the clinical trial protocol means a document containing the background, objective, rationale, design, methodology, including the matters concerning performance, management, conduct, analysis, then adverse event, withdrawal, statistical consideration and record keeping pertaining to the clinical trial. So this is a comprehensive document definition given in the chapter 1st, rule 2nd, subclause K. Now let us see what are the common deficiencies. So these deficiencies may be related to the administrative deficiencies, this may be related to the regulatory deficiencies, this may be related to the non-submission of some information, and this may be related to the safety concern and the scientific point of view. So when we receive the application, so these are the common deficiencies what I am going to mention here. Most of the time we observe that along with the application, the complete stability study report as per New Drug and Clinical Trial Rule 2019 has not been enclosed, and for that we issue the query. As per these rules, the complete stability data for the duration of the period of the clinical trial is required, and it is generally, we know, for development and other things it takes around 3 months. So at least 3 months data should be there, and this data should be on 3 batches of each proposed strength. If the strength is proposed for 50 milligram, 100 milligram, 200 milligram, then stability study data required for each strength. Sometimes the applicant apply for the 2 strength but submit the data only for the 1 strength. Then in that case again the query is issued. And these batches, here it is clearly mentioned, the batches, the 2 should be minimum pilot scale with, and that has to be submitted with a proper batch size, then what was the batch number, manufacturing date, the onset and date of completion of the stability study in an intended container. So that everything has to be submitted, but most of the time it is not submitted, and the CDSCO then issues a query. Then many of the time it has been found that the application is for the formulation, but the address has not been given and the CMC data has not been addressed properly. So for that also the CDSCO issues the query. The most of the time with the changes in the fees, the adequate fees has not been paid, and this is very important as is a government office. So The proper fees, that is for phase 1 we have seen it is a 3 lakh, then subsequently for 2 and 3 it is 2 lakhs. So whatever the fees given in our schedule, that has to be paid completely. If it is not paid, then the application is incomplete and the applicant has to submit that fees properly. Then sometimes if the drug is drug is not enough sensitive, drug is enough sensitive, and there may be a chances of getting it degraded by the light, then in that case, along with the stability, that is a routine stability study, real time accelerated, then the photo stability study also required to be submitted, and if it is not submitted, then again there is a query. Accelerated stability study like a force degradation study, that is also required to be submitted. Then whatever the method developed for the analysis of these samples, that detailed analytical method developed, and whether that method has been validated or not, that validation protocol, assay, related substance, then the data about the dissolution, that is found not submitted into the along with the application. For that also the CDSCO raised the query. Then one of the important thing, that is a dissolution data which specifies the release of the drug. So that is also required to submit, and it should be a comparative evaluation of dissolution by using F1 and F2 calculation on 12 unit dissolution data or 6 unit data, whatever that is mentioned in the official books. Then the chromatographic raw data, if the method has been developed and the method validation report has been submitted with respect to the accuracy, precision, LOD, LOQ of the data, then in that case, to verify whether really the method has been developed and whether the method has been validated or not, to the regulator the chromatographic data is also required. The chromatogram, then the chromatogram of the blank, then what is the test placebo and test sample spiked with the impurities, that everything should be attached with the applications. Then excipient compatibility study is also required while submitting the application as per our new drug and clinical trial rule. Sometimes the application is for the fixed dose combination drug. So particularly in such type of application, or whenever there is a change in the dosage form or any route of administration or indication, then particularly in this type of case, in this type of application, the advantage and disadvantage of the proposed formulation required to be submitted. It's not like that you have just submitted the application, but whatever the advantage and disadvantage as compared to the molecule or drug which is existing in market, that is also required to be submitted along with the rationale and the justification. Then if the application is for the clinical trial phase 3, phase 2, which is, and if the drug is already approved in some of the countries or some work has been done on that drug, then the published report of clinical trial carried out with the proposed formulation, that is also required to be submitted. Then for phase 3, before actually reviewing the phase 3 or the phase 1 data, the CDSCO expect to submit the toxicity data and preclinical data. It is also required for the FDC, proposed FDC, the toxicity data, and most of the time the applicant do not submit the preclinical data. Then material safety data sheet, then the finished product standard testing procedure, how they are going to evaluate, that is also required. So along with this, the certificate of analysis of 3 batches, particularly to know what are the impurities, the routine impurities, any specific impurities, whether they are within limit or not limit. For that, the certificate of analysis of 3 batches required to be submitted. Then phase 3 clinical trial protocol, justification for local clinical trial waiver. Many of the time we have seen in our previous lectures also, the applicant can request for the clinical trial waiver if the drug is already existing in the stringent regulatory countries. In that case, the justification for the clinical trial waiver required to be submitted by the applicant, so that based on that the application can be considered by the subject expert committee and by the regulators. Then copy of proposed prescribing information as per new drug and clinical trial requirement. What is the prescribing information which is approved internationally, and if it is available in the India, then what is that prescribing information? The copy of that has to be submitted. If it is not existing, then the proposed prescribing information and proposed package insert label has to be get approved from the DCGI office. With respect to the analytical data and the elemental analysis, then UV spectra, enantiomer purity, all these tests are very important, and whether that test have been performed and what are the results, whether they are within the limit, that has also required to be submitted by the applicant. Comparative dissolution data in multimedia we have already covered, so that should be in a multimedia, like in acidic condition, like in basic conditions, that is required to be submitted. And with respect to the animal toxicos study, whether the study has been done, then whether that laboratory where the study has been performed is compliant with the GLP or not. So it has been, that we have seen it is in GLP accreditation is mandatory, and the data generated should be in the lab which is compliance with the GLP norms, that is good laboratory practices. So that certificate also required to be submitted. Then we have the procedure that before sending it to the subject expert committee, we require to send the literature data to the different experts. So in this regard, so we require the 11 set of the published literature supporting the use of a drug for the proposed indication. Then we forward this literature data for the study purpose to the different experts, so that they have the basic knowledge of the proposed drug and they can deliberate thoroughly into the subject expert committee. So before actually having the subject expert committee, these 11 sets of the literature data should be submitted to the CDSCO. Then application for bulk with separate challan and data. If there are different application, like application for the API, application for the formulation, then the different type of challan and the forms are required. In case of the certificate of analysis, as I have mentioned, the certificate of analysis from 3 batches are required. So if the impurity is higher than the specification limit, then justification for higher specification limit of impurities as compared to the Indian pharmacopoeia or any other pharmacopoeia, that is required to submit. Then in case of the import of the drug from other countries, the applicant has to submit a free sale certificate from the country of origin, whether that this free sale certificate ensures that the drug, whether it is available in the market or not in that country. So for that purpose we require a free sale certificate. Then compatibility study of each ingredient in case of the FDC is required to be submitted. Then if the protocol is for the bioavailability and bioequivalence, the inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, investigator undertaking, objective, rationale of study design, everything required to be submitted, not only for the BAB protocol but for the clinical trial protocol also. Once it is in the subject expert committee, what we have found, the many of the times the application is not complete and the design whatever they have given for the clinical trial, that design is not appropriate. Sometimes the subject expert committee found that the sample size calculation that is not matching with the number of the points they have taken for the evaluation, and it is not matching with the primary and secondary objective. So in that case the subject expert committee may ask to change the size of the samples, and they can also ask to revise the design of the protocol. Then sometimes the data submitted with respect to the safety of the drug, that is not adequate. So sometimes the applicants, they are submitting only one or two published literature available in the market, and that is also not adequately addressing the concern regarding the safety. And sometimes they are not from the reputed journals also, and there is no authenticity. So that required to be checked by the applicants before submitting the application. Then the applicant required to submit the any safety concern raised by the US FDA or any other countries. If the drug is already approved in the US or any other countries, whether that country has raised any safety concern, whether any serious adverse event or the adverse events are associated with that drug, that is also required to submit with the application. So these were some of the common observations we found during the clinical trial protocol submissions, and these are not the limited to this, just we are giving the example. So the most important the things applicant has to be keep into the mind, that first he has to go through the checklist, and we have given the detailed checklist. So the first part is he has to submit all the applications whatever mentioned into the checklist, then the regulatory status of the drug, then published clinical trial, and that published clinical trial should be adequate into the number and with the proper justification and from the well reputed journals, then only it can be considered, and this should address the safety concerns. The other important thing we have seen, that is the preclinical data, that is also that data should be generated, and the data generated should be as per the new drug and clinical trial rules. Now let us see what happens if the protocol has not been submitted or the application is not complete in all respect, or sometimes the applicants, they generate the data and they fabricate the data, like we have many of the time we have seen the stability data what they submit. In that stability report they mentions that the batch has manufactured in the month of, say for example, January 2019, and they are submitting the application in the March of 2019, and the data what they are giving, that data is of the 6 months stability. From that we can we can smell that the data has been fabricated, because it's not possible to generate the 6 months data within the 3 months. So from that dates we can find out that data has been fabricated and managed to submit to the CDSCO. In such cases, now in the new drug and clinical trial rule, in the last chapter, it has been given that whoever or any other person on his behalf of the applicant is found to be guilty of submitting such data which is a misleading or fake or fabricated document, then the licensing authority may, after giving him an opportunity to show cause, so the licensing authority first will give the chance, because sometimes what I have mentioned, the date of the January and the date of the March has been given, but sometimes there may be a typographical errors also, and it is not intentionally, but this is without intention, that can be happen. So considering that it is not intentional, so the licensing authority issues a show cause notice and asks as to why such an order should not be made to debar the applicant. and if applicant is unable to provide the satisfactory justification, sometimes if the licensing authority feels that there is a need for the verification of the data at the site where the data has been generated, then the licensing authority can send auditor or the drug inspectors to verify whether really they have generated the data or not generated, whether they have fabricated the data, or whether they have generated the data but they have not submitted it properly and there may be a typographical error or something. So after reviewing all this, the justification or the inspection, if it is found guilty and if it is considered that the data has been fabricated, the licensing authority may debar the applicant for such a period as it deem fit. So this action can be taken by the licensing authority. So this is all about the observation. These are not limited, but only this can be the examples. So what we have learned from this topic, let us have the summary. So we have seen what is means by protocol, what type of applications, what type of CT applications are there, like a new drug, subsequent drug, FDC, global clinical trial. Then we have seen whether it is approval is mandatory or not. Further, we have seen the different types of the deficiencies which are observed into the CDSCO expert committee or by the officers of the CDSCO. Now it's a time for you to give some reply to the questions, to check whether you have attended it properly, whether your attention was there or not. So the question for you is, as per New Drug and Clinical Trial Rule, which schedule gives the requirement of documentation for clinical trial application? So you have to mention the schedule. So it is the schedule 3 which gives the requirement of document for clinical trial application. The next question is, as per New Drug and Clinical Trial Rule, CT4 is a common form of application for clinical trial. You have to answer it into the yes or no. So yes, it is a common application, be it is an application for FDC, new drug or IND, it is a common application. So this is the quick recap, and this is about the clinical trial protocol deficiencies. In our next lecture, we are going to see what are the deficiencies or anomalies which the regulator generally find out at the clinical trial site or at the bioequivalence and bioavailability study center. So till then, take care and bye bye. We will see in next lecture. Thank you.